Well, we wanted to talk about breakdancing at the Olympics, right? We mentioned that at the
We
top.
did want to talk a little bit about breakdancing at the Olympics, but let's say from the top, lead off with that is congratulations to Ami Yuasa and Ami Yuasa from Japan and Phil Wizard from Canada, who took the gold medals, the first ever gold medals in breakdancing at the Olympics.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing. It's big, and I think it's a net positive for hip hop and for the culture. So congratulations to them. I know there was controversy that has kind of overshadowed the conversation, but I think those winners, and then of course Nicka from Lithuania and 617 from China, Dany Dann from France, and Victor from the USA got
You got the
the
names
silvers and
memorized.
bronze. Yeah, I think it's important because we could go into a deep rabbit hole about the controversy that happened, and that's like I said, that's been the conversation, and it's gonna be the conversation for a while. But I think these dancers should have a lot of that conversation for being the winners and being coming out on top and setting that historical precedent. So
You mean not the Australian dancer who did the rubber chicken routine?
yes,
Uh,
Raygun, Rachel,
Chicken gun spin on his back. Here you go. Chicken.
Dr. Rachel Gunn. I've been trying to avoid making a video because uh, there's layers to this point here. It's
Right.
not just that she was had a poor routine, and she did have a poor routine. But there can also be, if you go and look and read some of her writings, her academic writings, because she has a PhD in culture and she researches on breakdancing and that type of thing in hip hop. And so and she lectures at a university in Australia on these topics. And you go through and do some of the readings on her writings, and there's a lot that can be picked apart there that plays into the performance at the Olympics.
Was
Uh,
it satire?
there's there's things that make it seem like she's purposefully trying to look at hip hop or view hip hop through the lens of other paradigms. Like she's trying to put that on top of it because she feels excluded and she feels entitled to be able to change hip hop. Like she can come in and do what it is that she wants in that regard. Because so for example, she writes that basically as a white female from Australia, she doesn't have the access to the authenticity that is required in hip hop, and that authenticity should not be a marker. And so that basically authenticity really shouldn't be a part of it, or that she can
It's not. Is
go
it about
around that.
authenticity? It was just a bad dance routine. I mean, I
Well,
think
she's
it.
talking about in general. This was in her
Yeah.
writing. And talking about in general, as far as a marker in the hip hop culture, authenticity is one of the things. She's like, it's a
Sure.
meritocracy, and
Okay.
then
Yeah. But it almost sounds like she's conflating some ideas here because it is very hip hop
exactly,
to be authentically true to yourself, right?
exactly,
Japanese dancers who were killing it, were they not hip hop? They were very
right,
hip hop and they were very authentic and true to who they were. And so,
right.
what does that even mean?
That's my point. Like it's like she's conflating this idea and not fully understanding something she's supposed to be a subject matter expert on, is that you can still be even, you don't have to go and spend like, a year in the hood or in the projects in the
You have to break dance
Bronx.
on Cedric Avenue.
Right. You don't have to do that to be considered authentic. And that's where she seems to be misinformed on and thinks of that idea of authenticity as being gatekeeping in hip hop. Whereas the gatekeeping part of that authenticity is more about you showing that passion for the culture, you having that respect for the
Yeah.
culture and putting in those reps, putting in that
Right.
time, showing that love and unity. That's where you get accepted. That's where you
Yeah.
get to be brought in, not
And
because you came from one person
yeah,
or
and
one
doing
place.
something different would gain her a lot of props, a lot of recognition if
Absolutely.
it was seen as good, right? If there was
Right.
merit to it, if there was artistic value, if she
Right.
was really pushing the envelope in a way that made people go, "Whoa, like that's crazy. I wish I could do that." Like that would be very hip hop, and that would be very authentic, and that wouldn't be anything that people really should give her a hard time about. I think it
Right.
was that the performance just came off like almost a mockery.
It came off like a mockery, and you know, in hip hop and in breakdance or in any of the art forms, any of the core elements of hip hop, be it MCing, DJing, breaking, or graffiti, artistic expression and creativity is highly prized, but
Yeah.
there are some basic tenets to that
Right.
that
Right.
identify this as that art form.
Right.
And so breakdancing is not interpretive dance, like where you can just go in there and just do any old kind of thing and people are going to be like, oh my God, that's awesome. There are still some tenets that you have to latch on to, and she was throwing a lot of those out the window because of, you know, and I feel because partly her view of this idea that, well, I can't be authentic, so I'm going to do whatever I want to be. And there's an entitlement to think that I can do this.
Yeah, that feels like an excuse.
It does. It does. And it also is an issue with some academics where they want to come in from this academic point of view and they miss the cultural part of it. They miss that connection part of it. And I think she may fall into that trap, but also there are those people who just have that, some people would say, that hippie type of, oh yeah, whatever, dude, type of thing. And that's fine, but in certain spaces, you have to have, there still has to be some grounding
Yeah,
to what
but
it
it's
is.
also easy. I mean, to me, I don't know. I think it's easy in the sense that being authentic is very hip hop, right? It's seen
Right,
doing
sure.
something your own way, putting your own spin on things. Like you said, there's still certain foundational principles, but putting your own spin on it, doing something a little bit different. You're doing something in your own way.
Right.
Uh, injecting your own cultural background or upbringing or experiences into hip hop. That
Right.
is considered very hip hop. So it should be
Absolutely.
easy, right? In a sense of to be authentic, all you got to really do is be yourself and be good at it, right? It's really it's
Right.
not like it's not rocket science. It's not. It's almost like she's making it too academic and tripping herself up.
Right. I think, and some of it is being too academic. Some of it is her own inadequate feelings of inadequacy because she feels that she can't be that authentic or that part of hip hop
Here's the
because she
thing.
comes from Australia, because she's a white woman, and because she's kind of removed from, I guess, the Bronx, so to speak. She didn't name that specifically, but it's just like she
Here's my
can't be.
question.
There are B-boys and B-girls all around the world.
If she feels that way, why was she at the Olympics?
Well, that's the thing, right? So that's, people are questioning, why are you at the Olympics, period. And from what I've seemed to gather from some of the readings and whatnot in the statements is that they were trying to make sure that the scene was represented in the Olympics, which I think is good. How she became the forefront of that is
Right.
really weird because
She
I
is at the forefront
know.
of the Australian breakdancing scene. I mean, so it means, let me ask you this. If you were to go to Australia and ask before the Olympics, before this, right? A month ago, if you were to go to Australia and you were to ask people who are the hottest B-boys and B-girls around here, would her name come up?
Maybe. So here's the thing. I went back and watched the qualifying rounds, the rounds that she won to get to the Olympics, because she had to beat people in
Yeah.
competitions to get that spot. And so I went
That's
back
fair.
and I watched those. And the commentators were commentating on it, and one of them called her an Aussie legend. Um,
But you
she's
could be an
well
Aussie
known,
legend for other things, maybe because of her academics. I mean, was it
but
for
Aussie legend in the scene. So
in breakdancing in particular?
right. So that kind of got me thinking, like, okay, maybe, she's
Was she like
putting
that one who would always go, like hang out with them, and then she was just like
that right,
for
right,
so
right.
long? They were like, all right, like they're kind of a fixture here. We got to put up with them.
And she won, apparently this year, she won sports personality of the year as a break dancer in Australia.
Were
I
her
saw
other
that.
routines better?
No, they were all this way. They were
Really?
all like this.
And was
Even
she beating people who were actually breakdancing well.
Well, here's the thing: the qualifying rounds, it seems like seems that the participants were all inexperienced breakdancers.
Okay.
And if you watch it, you'll see that she even, there were people that were, I think, what was her name? Holly Molly or something like that, or Molly, something like that, that she won in the final for that qualifier. And Molly was better than her, but not by much. So there were a lot of inexperienced people in that competition. So it begs the question, where were the more
Yeah.
experienced people?
And I know there are breakdancers in Australia.
There are definitely some hip hoppers in
Yeah.
Australia. There
Yeah.
definitely, you
Yeah.
know, so that's raised all kinds of questions, right? Some people on social media have been saying, and you can't trust social media completely, but some in the scene are saying, well, we never heard about the qualifiers. So some are speculating that this was them keeping it to themselves so they
Right.
could push forward an agenda.
That was going to be my next question, actually. Is
That's
that
that's one of the
possible?
speculations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because from what an article that I read was that when this came about, right, that hip hop or breakdance was going to be in the Olympics, was that the scene kind of scrambled to try to, because you have to comply with certain regulations to make this happen. You have to have a federation formed. You have to have certain things set up. And so like the scene and the organization that was going to spearhead this was trying to scramble to get these things set up. And so some of the more experienced people were taking some admin roles in these things
Right.
and couldn't be participants.
Right.
Um, and so maybe they lost out in that regard. But still, that doesn't, to me, it doesn't give me enough clarification. I'm sure
Yeah.
there were
Yeah.
more experienced
You know
B-girls
what?
in the scene.
This sounds like a documentary. Maybe we should go to Australia and do a documentary. It could be a short form documentary. We could turn it into micro content for TikTok. Make it like a 20
Go to
part.
Australia. Right. It just get a man on the scene type of stuff. Now,
Yeah, yeah, and investigate, right? Talk to the people who are at the tryouts, and yeah, talk to people who didn't hear about it. Talk to people in the scene. Show people in Australian hip hop who actually do this and would have done a much better job repping the culture. I mean, there's content there.
I think there definitely is. And so one of the other controversies is that they're saying that her husband was one of the judges on the panel, but and one of the heads of the federation that was formed. But that's misinformation. He was not on that panel. He was not one of the judges. However, he became the Olympic coach for the team. And you go and watch him dance, he dances exactly like she dances. So he's the one that taught
He's a
her.
coach.
He was the one that
I don't know. You can write the book on this, Reggie. You've done extensive research on this.
like I said, I got into it because I know some activists in Australia. I know people in the hip hop culture, and
Wait, we
so
had someone like that on our show.
we did. And so I'm having conversations with people from Australia, and because at first it was just like, oh wow, that was just horrible. That was whack. And then I started learning a little bit more about, I get sending articles and looking at her writings and looking at some of this, and then it started getting a little offensive and upsetting.
Mhm.
And so I started doing more of the reading and the research on some of it. And like I said, I've been holding back on trying to put together a video or a thought on it, even though I guess I've done some of
Yeah,
it here. But because the idea really is that conversation and this attention and the documentary type of thing really should be more on Ami and Phil Wizard, who won the first ever
true,
thing, so
true.
that the culture can
That
move
okay.
forward.
See, a bottom line is forming because that goes back to our initial conversation about how the negative gets more attention than the positive today.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right. So, like if this is the conversation around her, and it is the conversation, unfortunately, that's what the conversation is, and there's reason for it. That's not even, we're not even saying that it shouldn't be talked about. It absolutely should. But if this becomes the main conversation, then the question is that makes it less likely for something like this to happen again in the future for breakdancing to be in
Yeah.
a subsequent Olympics at some point, because then it
So let's
becomes
get
okay.
because it's not going to be part of the Olympics in 2028. What we heard.
Right. In LA. It's not going to be, but they're already lobbying for it to be at the one after that, which is going to be in Australia, kind of ironically, I believe. Um, and so if we want the organizers, the IOC, and the worldwide culture to look at this as it was a positive experience, then the conversation should be about the winners, about how it went from a niche subculture in the Bronx all the way to the worldwide audience, to the Olympics, to people on stage. Like we can talk about how the Australian Olympic president had come out in defense of Raygun, saying, "Oh, well, this is kind of misogyny, the criticism against her." But we can also we can throw that aside as an excuse because it is, and look at, well, look at all the performers. Nobody was criticizing any of the other women that participated in there. I mean, there was one, the girl from Lithuania, but that disappeared after her skills were shown. And look at how there were competitors from Japan, from China, from, again, Lithuania. There was a refugee competitor who had really no country to fly under, but wanted to dance and came to represent as a statement, which is very much hip hop, right? Same with in the men's side, there was people from Australia area, Canada, America, and
Be very meta for there to be a hip hop team at the breakdancing event, because you know how KRS-One always talks about he got the United Nations to recognize hip hop as its own culture. Imagine hip hop sent its own team to the Olympics, and would it be unfair if there was a hip hop team at breakdancing because that's their own sport?
that would be amazing. That would be definitely amazing.
I don't
So,
represent any country. I represent the hip hop nation. Imagine that.
right, yeah.
Well,
So,
anyway, before we go on here, I have to award the rubber chicken of the week to Raygun. Is that her name?
Raygun, yeah.
For and for this reason specifically, for saying that she could not be authentically hip hop yet participating in a hip hop event at the Olympics nonetheless. We've got the rubber chicken of the week.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
So
she's self-admittedly a part-time participant.
yeah. So putting aside the negative for a second, I did want to give props to Homeboy Sandman, right? He came
Yes.
to our album release party as a fan, really, just a guy checking out the show. And here he is, his song now being used as a backdrop for this breakdancing at the Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah. Dope song. The Carpenter, produced by Two Hungry Bros.
Yeah.
And
He
this is
actually, do you remember, by the way, before, it might have been a couple of years before, maybe 1 year before our album release party, he actually did a show with us. He performed, I think he might have opened the show for us, but he performed the same night as us.
where
Um,
was this at?
this was in Manhattan. I forget the name of the place. Was it
Was that the
Alphabet
Knitting
Lounge?
Factory?
No, no, it was a smaller venue. It was
Okay.
at, I believe it was that venue where that guy was trying to kind of play us. Remember the promoter was, I think it was that same night. The promoter put us on late intentionally or something like that. There was a
I remember
scenario.
that.
I forget exactly what happened. I know we got annoyed at the promoter for the way that he played it, but Homeboy Sandman might have been the first artist. He might have opened that show, and then I think we went on last. But I think what it was they put so many artists in between that by the time we got on, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and the crowd was almost all gone.
Yeah. That used to annoy me. I like, frequently, I mean, we perform in different things, and even in showcases where we would be the not in the showcase, but we would be the invited guest performer,
Right.
like like the
The
headline
headline act.
performer, so to speak. But then you end up being the one that's last on the bill
Right.
because you're like the guest. But a lot of people leave before
Right.
that
Right.
happens.
Especially because when it's a showcase,
Especially
I
if
don't
it's
know if this
small.
was a showcase or not. I think it was a regular show, but with the showcases in particular, people perform and they bring some of their friends to watch
Right.
them perform. And so what ends up happening is when an act performs, oftentimes they leave after their own set, and their friends leave with them.
Right,
And
right,
right
right.
as all of the acts start performing and leaving, the crowd gets smaller and smaller because they're bringing their friends out with them, and then
Yeah,
who's left at the end?
right. We should have been like, look, let's switch it around. Listen, we're the guest performers here. We should start the show. We should lead off the show.
Yeah, or yeah, sometimes the crowd isn't all there in the beginning either. Maybe at the height of the night,
Break it up in the middle.
right in the middle, yeah, right before intermission.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I think
true.
we have
'Cause
to start doing that. Do we? I know we were trying to sometimes tell them not to have so many people on the bill, but also I think like with Randy and Winter, I believe when we first performed for them, we went on last, and it was the same type of deal. It was only them and their friends left because it was so late, and they saw that we kind of killed it, and they were like, "Well, next time we're gonna put you on a better time slot." And I think going forward, they did that for us, where
Right.
they made sure to put us on at the height of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that was always like, it's dope being like the guest performer, but like, yeah. Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah, but yeah, but
Fun.
shout out to
Good
him.
days.
Shout out to Homeboy Sandman because he definitely performed at our show and came just to check out our album release party when we did it. So he was in the spot with us a few times, and here he is now having his song featured at the Olympics. So that's pretty dope.
Yeah, very dope. So shout out to him. Congrats. And ironically, it kind of fits in because Homeboy Sandman is one who very much does it differently than everyone else because he doesn't have any social media. He
Mm,
doesn't have Twitter. He doesn't have Instagram.
that's interesting.
He's
I
never
didn't know.
really had it. He's got a Facebook artist page, and that's it.
I
But
well, no, he had. I don't know if he still does. He definitely was my Facebook friend for a while.
he
Just
doesn't
as
have that anymore
his
because he
own
used to have a
personal.
personal Facebook friend,
Yeah, yeah,
for Facebook page.
yeah.
Doesn't have that anymore either.
Okay. Then how
So,
do you maintain your artist page without a Facebook? I think you need. Don't you need one? You have
yeah,
someone
but
else?
he can deactivate that part, I believe.
Can you?
Uh,
I don't know.
and I think they made it where you don't need
Maybe,
the
maybe.
personal one anymore. I don't know. But I
Okay.
think that's the probably, the only social media presence and maybe a YouTube account where he puts the videos. But
Right.
as far as engaging in social media activity, he's never done that.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty crazy how in today's world there are people, they're outliers, right? But there are
Right.
people who can find success even without social
Right.
media. I think that's the dream for
Right.
most artists. Most people probably don't want to be on social media if they can help it, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. Maybe my perspective is skewed, but I always feel like social media is seen almost as a necessary evil. People are on it because they need to brand themselves. But if they didn't need to
Right.
do that, they probably wouldn't be on as much.
I attribute his success to he took it to the core. Like his success to me was networking.
Yeah.
Um, because in the scene, he was at everyone's show. He went to everybody's event. He was a big supporter of everybody. And like I said, he came to our release parties. And so that way you make your face seen, you make connections with artists, you make connections with the scene. And so when it came time for his first album release party, I remember it was packed. It was literally a who's who of the hip hop scene because he had shown that love to everybody else.
Mhm.
And so I think that's how he maintains
Yeah,
his.
but could you do that today?
Yeah, I think he could. I
You could.
mean,
How? How could you network that way without social media?
well, he didn't have social media then. He went
That
to
was,
the shows.
but
He
that
went
was
to the
back when there were a
events.
ton of shows. That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Back
don't
then
know.
In New York City, there were like 5 shows a week, and he was at all of them. And
Right.
now I have a hard time finding a show if I'm trying to go. Like there's some stuff that
Right.
happens at SOBs, bigger artists usually. We
Right,
buy
right, right.
tickets, and it's more like a concert, right? Like a major concert almost, but not like these shows that we used to see and be part of, where it was like all the different clubs, like remember Bowery Poetry Club and
Knitting Factory.
EGBs was one of them, I think, right? That was a big one, but it's also small in size. Yeah,
Yeah. The,
different,
the the Wonder Twins parties.
right. There was just so much stuff happening, and you basically walk around Manhattan and just wander into spots, and there'll be some hip hop going on, live hip hop going on. You know what I mean? That scene seems to be dead.
It It could be, or at least it's very, very subdued, not like it was.
Yeah.
But I think the core of that is that human connection that's showing up, and it's the same thing that we talked about with earlier with a politician and people going out doing the but like when we did the petitioning, right? And they're like, remember the people were surprised that you were out there. Oh, the candidate's actually here, like and that made a difference for a lot of
Still
people.
get that when I knock on doors, believe it or not.
Exactly.
Sometimes
Right.
people say to me, wow, I can't believe the candidate came to my house. Someone said to me, I've been living in Rockaway for 10 years. You're the first candidate who actually showed up to my door and asked for a vote. And guess what? They voted for me, right? Because that
Right.
was
And so I think
powerful.
that human connection that brings that element back. Advertising is great and it's very effective, but it's also a little bit impersonal in that it's not a face-to-face connection. Whereas I
I just
think that
don't think the opportunities are there anymore in music
right,
specifically or entertainment like it was.
right,
Now it's all about TikTok. It's all about going all out. And we talked about that does have its benefits,
right,
but
right. There's no fat beats anymore,
yeah,
what I mean?
exactly the in stores. Remember that? That used to be a thing, right? You
Right,
put out a record and go to the stores to promote it, perform in
right.
the stores,
Matter of fact,
get it on
it's
consignment.
funny. It's funny because a friend of ours, Lucko from
Yeah,
Australia,
yeah.
he came to New York and he had visited. Remember that time he came to New
Yes, I
York?
took him to a Q-tip party, and he was very surprised. He was very in awe of the fact that he was standing 2 feet from Q-tip, and he walked right by us.
Well, I took him to because he was staying with me, and I took him to an in-store. No, it wasn't an in-store. I took him to Fat Beats because he wanted to pick up some records.
Okay.
And just so happened we were in Fat Beats, Homeboy Sandman came in.
Yeah, yeah.
And I introduced him. I was like, "You're picking up records. Look, this is a cat out." And he was new. He didn't have a lot of people. I think it was just dropped. What was this? Godson? No, not Godson. What was it? Something Son was the name of his album. I forget what it was. But he had just dropped his first album, and I'm like, "Listen, this guy is dope." I introduced him to local. I said, "This guy is dope. If you're looking for new music stuff you haven't heard, you definitely want to check this out." They talked a little bit. Loco picked up his album, and he loved it and whatnot. So it was funny that we mentioned that because
Yeah.
that connection, that human connection. You got
Right.
to
By the way, this I guess is indicative of how far back this goes now. Homeboy Sandman, I do recall, had a blog. That was his social media early on. He
oh,
actually
did
had
he?
no blog. I remember this, yeah, because I remember a story about how he said when he was growing up, he had roaches in the kitchen. I think he said he would purposely leave the lights off at night in the kitchen and then run out in the middle of the night, turn the lights on, and then he'd have like a shoe and he'd try to kill all the roaches at once. But he would
Wow.
write these stories on his blog that he would put out
Wow.
there. And that was kind of a way I think that he was trying to connect with people also by telling his personal stories about himself. But that's
Wow.
like pre-social media, right? But he was kind of
Right.
working that back then. I think he kind of fell back when it came to the more modern social media, but he was already built up at that point where he really didn't need to. He already had a following. So,
Right. I
you
think
know,
it's probably yeah, I think part of his
I think it
strategy.
would be more difficult to try that now.
It could be, but there's still shows, there's still showcases, maybe not as many,
It's not the
but
same, man. But like, yeah, so I'm saying like he would be out there every single night going to things.
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
surprised.
there were networking showcases
Yeah, there's
before.
not. I look for this stuff, man. I wish there was stuff like that. I look for it. I can't find anything anymore. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
believe me. I mean, if they had that stuff going on, I would be there now.
right.
So, yeah, maybe we got set up. So I actually reached out to Randy not long ago. He said that they do some stuff. So I want to talk to him. Maybe we can get more
Yeah.
shows going on with them.
Maybe that might be a thing. Set up a night in Rockaway. You know, a venue. Let's get something.
It was a really good spot that closed
There's
down.
artists. There are artists out there. The thing is, there's still artists.
Oh
People
yeah,
still
yeah,
want to express themselves.
right, right.
Yeah.
But I do see this from newer artists. Not all of them, but I've seen the sentiment expressed. They don't want to do live shows. A lot of them, where they'll
Yeah.
say the point to say, "I don't tour. Why would I do that? I don't do live shows.
Right.
Why would I do that? All I gotta do is post a TikTok and I get more views that way. I ain't gonna go leave my house. And do, you know what I mean? People have that mentality now too.
Sure. Sure. And that kind of feeds into that other thing that we were going to mention as far as that video where artists were talking about they
Oh
don't
yeah.
write anymore. They
So
just punch
before we
in.
do that, let's wrap up this breakdancing topic because
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
all of the week. Also, there were people saying that breakdancing number one, shouldn't be at the Olympics, and number two, isn't even really a sport. And some of that I think just was anti-hip hop,
Sure.
racist, right? Somebody made a wisecrack, what's next, rap music at the Olympics, and might have been a shot at me. I don't know. But there are people saying that it's not appropriate. Some maybe who aren't anti-hip hop per se, but don't understand how dancing is considered a sport at all.
Right.
And I kind of have questions. I think it's worth a discussion or a consideration as to, is it really a sport, and what makes it a sport, right? What makes something a sport? Sure, you can look up the dictionary definition and that kind of thing, but there's also connotation, right? There's denotation and there's connotation and context, and just kind of how society and culture approaches these issues. And there's always been debate as to what can be a sport. I see sometimes people ask, are esports sports, right? Or you know how they have people playing video games, and some people consider that to be an actual sport. There's some people say, come on, there's no athletic ability required. It's, you know, people all have these different ideas as to what makes it a sport. Obviously, when it comes to breakdancing, it does, to do it well, it does require athleticism, and
Absolutely. Strength.
Right. In that sense, maybe more of a sport than other forms of dancing. But
Right.
I think there's still a question to be asked there about where do you draw the line? What makes something a sport, and what makes something worthy of being an Olympic sport?
Right. And doesn't even have to be classified as a sport to be in the Olympics. It can be an Olympic event. Someone brought up the point that if you look at it, it's, as far as the athleticism and the movements, it's not that different from the gymnastics floor dancing, that routines where they're just running back and forth doing their tumbling passes and dancing to music. So how is that considered a sport and a competition, whereas this isn't? Well, it is for the Olympics,
but I think you can call that into question as well, right? Is that appropriately an Olympic sport? I mean,
or
the distinction between a sport and a game. This isn't really a game, right? But some people will say, like, for example, pool, right? That's always, I think, debated. The billiards,
right?
Some people, that's a game. No, it's a sport. No, it's a game. Golf. I think most people call golf a sport, but there are some who say, listen, you're just standing there hitting a ball. You're not running around, not really exerting yourself.
Right. So I would say event. Does it even have to be a sport? It's an Olympic event. It's an Olympic event, and in the spirit of competition, you know.
Yeah, but it's also that type of competition, and there are plenty of Olympic events like this where it's subjective. It's not like you have
curling is not a sport,
right? But with curling, you have a clear winner, right? I mean, I don't know the rules of it, but I would assume if you get over the finish line first, you get a point, or you win, or whatever. Right. I mean, there's an objective way of measuring who won the game. With this, and with a lot of, I mean, obviously with figure
skating, of gymnastics, figure skating, a lot of stuff.
It's, it's the judges giving it a scale from 0 to 10, right? So it's subjective in that way. So I guess that's culturally just what we accept as being part of the Olympics, and in that way, this would fall in the same category. But how is it not just dancing?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, because if you have this, I guess the question that becomes, what are the criteria? Is it whatever the host country wants it to be? Is it arbitrary? Are there certain clear defined parameters?
Yes, there were parameters, but again, if you when you have judges, they're going to have to make.
Oh no, but I'm saying as far as qualifying it as a possible Olympic event, right? Like if you're saying that breakdancing can become an Olympic event, well then can ballroom dancing be an Olympic event? Can anything? Can line dancing?
It's funny that you say ballroom
chicken dance. I mean, like, what, you know what I mean? Like, where do you draw the line?
It's funny that you said ballroom dancing, because the organizing body, the World Dance Sport Federation, World Dance Sport Federation or organization that did the push to help get this into the Olympics, is a ballroom dancing organization, and they've been trying for years to get ballroom dancing in the Olympics, but it came to the realization and that no one cared about, it's too antiquated for ballroom dancing. It's not interesting enough to make it to the Olympics. And then for some reason they shift to breakdancing because it was the possibility to capture the youth. So some people think that they were using hip hop or using breakdancing as a way to still get their ultimate goal of getting ballroom dancing
I
in.
see. So there's gonna be all different types of dancing now. You start with break dance, and then you move to other types of dancing
Right.
until ballroom. Maybe ballroom comes in like right after the waltz or something.
I don't know, maybe. So, but it's funny you mentioned that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's kind of another debate. People are saying, should it be even classified as a sport? I don't think it needs to be classified as a sport. And a lot of people that I've seen in hip hop don't say it's a sport because it's a culture, it's an
Yeah.
artistic
Yeah.
expression.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it can't be an event. It doesn't have to be a sporting event. It could just be an event, a competition. There were
When you think
competitions
of
all over.
the Olympics, we do think of at least athletics, which is
That's
commonly,
athletic. It's
but that's
definitely
commonly associated with sports, right? Sporting events, athletics.
it's definitely athletic though.
But there are other things, there are other activities that are athletic, which you probably wouldn't think belong in the Olympics.
No, but
Or you can have a push-up contest next year. That's athletic.
yeah, but there's not whole, organizations and competitions, push-up competitions around the world constantly. There is in breakdancing,
Mhm.
right? I mean, you've got the Red Bull
Which
competitions. You've got,
activity is best organized? Is that how you determine it?
I don't know if you say which is best organized, but I think there's a lot of good arguments for breakdancing to be included as an Olympic event.
What about something like graffiti
I can see
or
against
DJing?
it
What
too.
about DJing or graffiti?
Um, I could see more for DJing than graffiti
Okay, so you don't
because
think that athleticism should be a component of what makes something an Olympic event?
um it could be. No, it should be. If you're talking athletes, yeah, athleticism could be.
DJing, right? You don't need to be a good athlete to be a DJ.
Right. I'm looking at the spectator aspect of it, right? Some watching someone paint graffiti is not going to be very exciting to watch necessarily. Not that it can't be. I'm just saying that you think
I'm
about things
thinking
in the Olympics
Scribble
as a
Jam. You're right, because when you went to the Scribble Jam battles, they started having a breakdancing battle. Obviously, there was the MC battle. They had a
right,
DJ battle. They did have graffiti, but it was done a little bit different. It wasn't like, all right, let's bring out the graffiti writers on stage and make them draw their pieces. It was
right.
while the whole weekend was unfolding, they were out there marking up the walls. And then I think at the end of the weekend, you kind of looked at who had the best work collectively by the event's
Right.
end. But it
And then
wasn't
you wouldn't want them to do speed rounds to compromise their art either, because then it's like, you know. But I think, I'm not against I'm not against breakdancing being an event in the Olympics. However, there is the danger of it being in the Olympics, and a lot of people in the breakdancing community have raised this issue that since it's something in the Olympics, it has to comply with certain Olympic rules and regulations that all the other events have to comply with. And there's the danger of it being co-opted or taken over and the essence of it being broadcast as something else because it had to fit in this box. And so that could be the new influence for what breakdancing becomes. And it means the Olympics would change the culture.
I mean, judging by that Australian's performance, that ship might have already sailed.
It's possible. But I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to, I mean, there's a lot pushing back, especially inside. I mean, even the culture.
Kind of like we liked you better when you were underground, kind of thing.
Well, no, more of that's not a representation of what we do.
Well, you're right. But remember when the message came out, right? The actual MCs of the time was like, that's not what we do. It's not supposed to be on wax. It's not supposed to be recorded. It's something you do
Yeah,
live in
sure.
the club, right? It's
Right,
not
right, yeah.
sold commercially. That's not hip hop. So I
Right,
think
yeah.
the mentality was there from the beginning. It's not hip hop if it's consumed by the masses.
There's that, but also like those moves and that type of thing is, there
Rapper's
we
Delight, by the way.
we do have some standards.
I
Oh,
meant Rapper's Delight, not the message.
huh? Oh yeah, Rapper's Delight, yeah. It's like we do have some standards. We do have,
Right.
there's something to look to. So, I think there's
But I mean, in theory, the Olympics,
argument.
as the Olympics, should be upholding those standards, right?
You would think, but they're also an organization that are going to uphold their own standards and their own rules because they're looking at it from a different lens. They're looking at it from spectators, from TV deals. They're looking at it from the politics that go on behind the scenes. And so they're not just, and I mentioned that in the video that I was talking about, like when you get not just performers and break dancers and artists or athletes, when they're in that competition and they're about their event, their sport, they're about their thing, that's what matters to them. All that external stuff, the publicity, the politics behind the scenes, no, it's showcasing your artistry and your athleticism, and that's what the beauty of it is. And so
You're kind of saying that the Olympics is the equivalent of major labels getting involved with music.
it potentially could be. It could be, especially when you're dealing with something that's a culture.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there should be an effort to maintain the integrity of said culture and uphold
Right.
standards that aren't simply their own standards based around viewership and sponsorship and those
Right.
types of attributes, but what actually is foundational to the culture.
Right. And so when you're dealing with culture, that's where other questions arise. Like people are like, well, we didn't see anybody from the Rocksteady crew. This is the first time it's in the Olympics. Why were there none even asked or
Are they
hosting?
not aged out by now? You still have young Rocksteady members.
I'm sorry?
I said, are they not aged out by now? When I think of Rocksteady, I'm thinking of Crazy Legs and these guys who are probably like 65 years old right now.
No, they're young
I know, I'm
members
sure they
of
still got young
these
guys.
organizations.
It's
But
still,
why wasn't
I'm
Crazy
thinking of,
Legs asked?
you know,
Why wasn't he asked to be a judge? Why wasn't Crazy
right,
Legs asked to be a judge or something in that regard?
right.
And he said he wasn't asked. He said he probably would have turned it down if he
Yeah.
were, because this is not what he thinks it should be.
At least come
But
out and wave to the crowd, right? Give a speech.
something,
Put the
you
medal
know,
around the neck. Come on, give me something to work with here.
right. So that was what that kind of put some people off as well, that there was that disconnect, that this was just treated as an element for the Olympics and not an honor. It didn't honor any of the culture in that regard. However,
However, you still got Homeboy Sandman played. You still got, let's be honest, breakdancing displayed
exactly.
worldwide level, right?
Exactly.
So maybe it
And
wasn't
these
perfect.
breakers, these majority of them, these are people who have taken place in a lot of the community
Right,
competitions that
right,
had, so,
right, right. Well, again, let's not look at it through the lens of that one dancer that went viral.
right.
Let's look at it in its entirety. So the poll question of the week is: should breakdancing be included as a sport in future Olympic Games?
And let's make it clear that we did say it's not in the Olympics for was it 2028
Yeah.
in LA, but it is not because of the Raygun from Australia. I'm pretty sure this was decided even before it happened. So yeah, let's not say. I've seen pieces saying, "Oh, she broke Olympics. She's the one that ruined it for everybody."
I
That's
mean,
not,
it could become the
it
reason why it's
could
not
be
brought back.
now, but that wasn't the reason.
Right, right, right. I mean, maybe it was the reason for 28, but is it the reason for 32 and 36?
Well, they're pushing for 32. That same organization is pushing for 32, and I think it's going to be in Australia this time. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So
Yeah,
that's even
we'll
more
see.
reason to make this a positive experience than
Right.
a negative one.